Dear Honda Civic, I remember you quite fondly. You had quite a reputation for being the crush ng bayan back in the 90s. And the guys who were drawn to you had the reputation of being, let's call them F-boys. Now, look at you, looking all mature and sophisticated. You could almost pass for an executive car. I heard that you're worth a lot more money now too. Did you let all that fame get into your head? I mean, the forehead does look a lot more bloated now. It kind of reminds me of a certain citation, but I digress. I was actually one of the guys who were into you. 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. I skipped your 9th look as I wasn't really a fan. I did like the 10th, and this 11th generation is just starting to grow on me. It surpasses its predecessors in a lot of ways. Like for the first time, all variants now come with a turbo, and they're all quite quick. It also surpasses previous generations in terms of pricing. The most affordable model now sells for over 1.5 million pesos, and this RS variant sells for over 1.7 million. Are you still worth the money? Let's find out. The Civic tends to alternate its design from aggressive to conservative, and then back again every generation. The last generation Civic looked very aggressive, so it only follows that this 11th gen should look more conservative. And it does. It gets simpler and straighter lines. It almost looks like a slightly smaller Accord. This RS variant has a bit more flavor in its styling, but it's still not as aggressive looking as the previous Civic RS. The 11th Gen Civic RS may not look as aggressive or sporty as the previous Gen Civic RS, but it's still noticeably more sporty and more aggressive than the lower Civic variants. Now, as for the cosmetic differences, here at the front, the Civic RS gets these smoked LED headlamps. So the insides of the headlamps are blacked out, so it looks more aggressive and more sinister. Of course, you get the RS badge on the beluga nose. Aside from those though, the front looks exactly the same as the lower variants. The Civic V gets smaller 17-inch wheels. This gets bigger 18s finished in matte black. And they're wrapped in 235 40 series Michelin Pilot Sport tires, which are some of the best tires for performance applications. Now the car gets a lot of blacked out accents, like the side mirrors are finished in gloss black, the door openers, the shark's fin antenna, the window trims. By the way, you don't get provisions here for a roof rack. You don't get any mounting holes on the roof. So that's something that you might want to consider if you're a cyclist and you're planning to mount your bike on the roof. Here at the back, it gets this huge wing finished in gloss black, which I think is the most aggressive part of the car. You have an RS badge over here. The bumper is exactly the same as the Civic V. Like the Civic V, this also gets dual exhaust tips, but the dual exhaust tips of the RS are a bit more pronounced. Yeah, so aside from those, it looks almost the same as the Civic V. You don't really get a lot of aero here, except for the large wing at the back. And by the way, if you're worried that this is going to be lower than the regular Civic, it actually has the same 134mm ground clearance. So unlike the Civic S, which we featured last time, this has an actual physical button for opening the trunk. And in here you get plenty of cargo space. You have almost 500 liters of cargo space, which beats a lot of compact crossovers in sheer volume. So underneath the hood of the Civic RS is the same engine that powers the Civic V. This is a 1.5-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine that puts out 174 horsepower and 240 Newton meters of torque. It's coupled to the same CVT transmission. Like a lot of modern Honda interiors, the interior of the Civic RS looks simple, it looks minimalist. You don't get a lot of sharp angles or swooping lines like a lot of its competitors. Instead, you get straight, horizontal, and parallel lines. So perhaps the standout feature here is this honeycomb grille, which covers the aircon vents. Like some have said, I can imagine how this could be very difficult to detail. Now in terms of materials, the top of the dashboard is soft touch. This over here is soft touch as well. You get leather wrap armrests over here and also over here. The seats are leather wrapped with what looks like Alcantara inserts. The driver's seat is power adjustable. The passenger seat is manually adjustable. It also gets a leather wrapped steering wheel. This gets paddle shifters, and you get a lot of buttons here because this comes with Honda sensing. It tilts and it telescopes. The instrument cluster is fully digital. Now, one difference between the RS and the V variant is that the screen of the RS is bigger. This is a 9-inch screen, and thankfully you don't get the hump at the back that you get on the HRV. So it looks modern, and it looks like it actually belongs there. It doesn't look aftermarket. It has Apple CarPlay, it has Android Auto, and you also get a reverse camera with active guidelines. You get physical knobs and buttons here for your infotainment screen. You get physical knobs and buttons for your dual zone climate control, and they all feel very nice. They feel very clicky. Down here you get a wireless phone charger. You get 2 USB-A ports. You don't get any USB-C ports. You have one 12-volt outlet over here, an electronic parking brake without a hold. You have 3 different drive modes: Eco, Normal, and Sport. And you can toggle between the different drive modes using this button over here. This comes with the Bose speaker system, which sounds very good. Now in terms of storage, the glove box is quite decently sized. It's also dampened. You also get decent storage underneath the armrest. You have 2 large cup holders here with these spring-loaded tabs. Yeah, it's a simple interior, but it looks and feels solid. Nothing creaks when you push on it. It feels solidly built, as you would expect from Honda. The 11th Gen Civic is a lot longer than the previous generation, and that translates to a lot of interior space. I have quite a lot of legroom here. I have about isang dangkal, or about 6 or 7 inches, which is more than a lot of crossovers. Headroom is decent. I have about 1.5 to 2 inches of headroom. There is a bit of a center tunnel here though, so the center passenger might not be as comfortable as the other two. You get 2 aircon vents. You don't get any USB ports. You get a foldable armrest with 2 cup holders. It's also nicely padded. I just wish that it was a bit higher, as it is practically resting on the seat. The materials here though are a bit harder. Like, this is hard plastic, while at the front it's made of soft touch materials. Okay, so the Honda Civic RS comes with Honda Sensing, which includes adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, blind spot warning, autonomous emergency braking, and the likes. So right now I have adaptive cruise control turned on, and as you can see, my feet are not stepping on the brakes, they're not stepping on the gas. The vehicle is just automatically speeding up and slowing down on its own, depending on the speed of the car in front of me. This also has lane keep assist, although Honda's lane keep assist only works at highway speeds, I think above 70 kph. Okay, so over here you can see what Honda Sensing sees. As you can see, it can see the car in front of us. It can see these motorcycles over here.
Continue straight.
And it can tell if it's a motorcycle or if it's a truck in front of us. This also has lane keep assist, although it only works at highway speeds, I believe above 70 kph. So right now we don't have lane keep assist turned on. This also comes with a lane watch camera, although I'm not really a fan of it. I'm not a fan of it because it takes over the entire screen and gets in the way of me using Waze. And it tends to make me hesitate using my turn signals. driving the Civic RS, it's easy to forget that it has a CVT transmission. Response is very good, and it knows when you want to go fast. It knows when to keep the RPMs high. Brakes are pretty good.
In 400 meters, turn left.
Brakes. When you're driving on twisty roads like this, always try to slow down before the curve. Like,
Turn left.
despite its larger size, the 11th Gen Civic still feels like a Civic. The car feels planted, steering feels precise, it feels agile, and it feels very predictable. The car has plenty of power, but it's also quite predictable and easy to modulate. It almost feels like a naturally aspirated engine. The exhaust is quiet, but there is that distinct whine coming from the engine, which almost sounds like a supercharger. The suspension is not that stiff, but when you hit potholes, you feel it a bit more because of the lower profile tires. The closest car that I could compare the Civic to is the GAC Impao. Compared to the Impao, the Civic feels a bit more tame, and I don't mean that in a bad way. The power delivery of the Civic has a smoother gradient to it. It feels more linear than the Impao, which feels more frenetic. On the Impao, the power is mostly at the top end, and when the power comes, it can be abrupt, which sometimes causes some wheel spin. You never get any wheel spin on the Civic RS, partly because of the grippier tires, but mostly because of the CVT, which makes power delivery feel more feathered.
Good luck overtaking this guy.
The 0 to 100 time of the RS is over 8 seconds, which is slightly lower than the S variant, probably because of the larger wheels. Now, as for fuel economy, if you drive the car very conservatively, it can be very fuel efficient. I got about 18.6 kpl on the highway and about 10 kpl in the city. The Civic RS Turbo sells for 1,775,000 pesos, which is 192,000 pesos more expensive than the V variant. Now, as for the differences, the Civic RS Turbo is the only variant that comes with leather seats and a leather steering wheel. It is the only one that comes with a 9-inch screen. It is the only one that comes with paddle shifters, and it has bigger 18-inch wheels. Since all the variants now come with Honda Sensing, and all the variants now come with the same turbo engine, there might be less incentive now to buy the RS over the lower models. But if you're the kind of person who likes a car to look cool, straight out of the dealership, without having to modify it, then the RS might be the one for you. Nowadays, when everyone is proclaiming the death of the sedan, and what we're mostly left with are a few subcompact 100 horsepower econo boxes, I'm glad that Honda is still here, reminding us that sedans can still be exhilarating and desirable machines. Sure, it's more expensive now, but one could argue that such is the price of pedigree. Besides, if you want a sports sedan under 1.8 million pesos, your options are very, very limited. And those other options are Chinese. Now, I love the GAC Impao, but for those who are not yet ready to make that leap to a Chinese brand, at this price, the Honda Civic is still the quickest and most fun Japanese sedan that money can buy.